it just sort of became this hot mess explosion in my head. Hello there, dear huckleberries, and welcome to a not really fun video. It's not a fun video to make or talk about, but I'm gonna make it. Today is June 8th, and I just heard that Anthony Bourdain took his own life, I think yesterday. I have been planning to make this video, and it just felt really fitting to sit down and talk about it today while that feeling is still fresh. And this conversation isn't about suicide. However, it is about mental health. And for every person that speaks up about mental health, it takes away more and more stigma, and it can absolutely prevent suicide, because suicide is the ultimate point of loneliness and helplessness and hopelessness, and reaching out and talking about things makes it all better. So I'm going to tell you guys about an episode that I had during my 6-month road trip. The majority of you guys who have been watching me had absolutely no idea. During this time, I really wasn't comfortable telling anyone about it, but I got through it, and I guess I'm just gonna share this experience with you. This isn't an advice video or anything. It's literally just a story time kind of situation, and I'm gonna tell you guys about a pretty terrible panic attack I had on my road trip. But before I get into that, just to give you guys a little bit of history about me and my mental health, I've never been diagnosed with any mental illness, so I don't think I have clinical depression or any anxiety disorders. However, I do believe that there's a spectrum for everyone. I have fluctuated in between both at certain periods of my life, but it is all I guess holistically related and manageable. But that's kind of another point I want to make to this, is just because you don't have depression doesn't mean that you should feel uncomfortable about talking about this sort of thing, because we all have our own struggles, and your body and your mind are constantly changing. So just because I'm not diagnosed with anxiety or depression doesn't mean I didn't have a panic attack. And doesn't mean that people shouldn't feel comfortable talking about it and stuff. Yeah, this is uncomfortable. All in all, I have fluctuated throughout my life, and I've had some more depressive episodes, like when I was in middle school. Of course, that's a very hormonal time, but my brain was doing crazy shit back in middle school, and I fluctuated very often between anxiety and depression. And one thing I talked about in one of my first videos actually was post-vacation depression. That is absolutely real, and I've 100% experienced that. I had it after my road trip. I had it after my trip to Montana. I don't know. But in general, I err anxious. I think I've had 2 other panic attacks, but they were really small, and it was just more of just this overwhelming anxiety and fear, just depending on how I'm taking care of myself at the time. And I'll talk more into detail about what it felt like and what it was like. But I'm just saying this wasn't the first time it had happened, but it's been very sporadic and rare, and I have actually figured out what combination of things can cause this to happen. So anyways, okay. Time travel, first month on the road. I'm in New Orleans, still to this day, one of my favorite stops, favorite cities. I had so much fun there. It ended poorly, but I'm still just really glad that it all happened, and I learned, you know, a lesson out of it. But I was in New Orleans and I was going pretty hard, drinking alcohol every night, but not binge drinking, because I'm a solo traveler. You can't just go ham when you're by yourself in a city that you don't know. Like, you gotta, you know, be responsible. But I was still drinking, and then I would wake up and drink a ton of coffee and kind of just do it all over again. So, especially because the coffee in New Orleans is phenomenal. So my point is, you're going in between, you know, a depressant and a stimulant. And that was what I was doing for about a week and a half straight. And I was staying at a friend's house, but my friend was gone. So I was just crashing at her house by myself. You know, I had a fun day or whatever, and I was exhausted, and I decided to go back to my friend's house and watch a movie. And I decided to watch Interview with the Vampire because Anne Rice is from New Orleans. The book takes place in New Orleans and parts of the movie take place in New Orleans, and I was just really excited about that. The little 12-year-old goth girl inside of me just loves Interview with the Vampire. So I was watching it in my friend's bed, and it's like a dark movie. It's pretty weird. So that probably didn't help. I was laying in bed watching this movie, and then all of a sudden, this is so random and embarrassing. It's really embarrassing to say, but my gum started to bleed. I don't know if I had gingivitis or if I had eaten something and I just kind of nicked a gum and I didn't notice it and it just started bleeding. I wasn't flossing at the time. I haven't stopped flossing since this day. If anything, that is the best thing that came out of this situation, is that I don't skip flossing anymore, because this was traumatic. And it was like a very small amount, but it was blood. And I first tasted it and it was very frightening, especially because I was watching a movie about vampires. Like, the whole situation, even saying it now, kind of makes me anxious. Like, I guess it's kind of bringing me back. I'm instantly overcome with anxiety. For people who have never experienced a panic attack, I would just describe it as you're here and then all of a sudden it grabs you and sucks you in. You can't breathe. Your heart just starts to race. All of a sudden I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Like, what's happening to me? Is something terrible happening to me? I'm like, okay, Holly, calm down. It's okay. Like, you're fine. It's just a little bit of blood. But I just started to panic. I started to feel like really nauseous. Eventually I shut off the movie because that movie is just not what I needed. And I found something more light, and I'm just laying there just trying to breathe. Whatever happened, because it's kind of a blur now. Oh, you brought me an avocado. Eli brought me an avocado again. Not right now, baby. Go lay down. Go lay down. He's so cute. And it's all kind of a blur. I really just spiraled and my brain broke. And I've talked to other people who have had panic attacks. I ask them, like, did it feel like your brain was broken? Like, your brain was literally just going 100 miles an hour in 100 different directions without doing anything at all. And you had zero control, and it was terrifying. And it seems like other people have experienced that. Basically, I convinced myself that I was having a brain aneurysm, and if I fell asleep, I was gonna die. Which was terrifying. And I don't really remember what happened. I didn't leave the room. I was too afraid to go out of the room. Eventually I had to go to the bathroom before bed, and I remember going to the bathroom and it was like the most terrifying thing I had to do. I thought about, do I need to call 911? Do I need to go to the hospital? I don't really remember what happened, but eventually I fell asleep. It wasn't a lot of sleep though, because it kept me up. For sure, because my heart was racing. So I woke up the next day and I still felt really, really weird. And I just knew I had to leave. I was planning on staying longer in New Orleans because I was loving it. I actually went and filmed a video that day. It was my 3 favorite things about New Orleans and my 3 least favorite things about New Orleans. I watched it back recently when I was kind of planning to talk about this video just to see if I could tell that something was off, and I guess something was off, but when I'm filming, it's really easy to just turn on, you know, the same way that you turn on when you go to work, if you're a professional, you know, like leave your baggage at the door kind of thing. But yeah, I felt really weird. At the time, I was convinced I had been drinking too much and like the alcohol was the root of the problem. So, you know, I stopped drinking and I drove all the way to Florida. I drove to Fort Walton. I filmed another video there, but I actually maintained a pretty severe level of anxiety for the next two days, probably, to that point where I just couldn't talk to anyone. I just was like really in my head. I couldn't talk to anyone. I didn't want to call anyone. I just started to think, I'm gonna have to go home. I can't handle this road trip. I can't do this. I was planning a 6-month road trip and I hadn't even reached the 1-month mark and this was happening to me and it wasn't going away. I would go to a cafe and try and make a video or like edit or work and I'd be drinking coffee. I don't know if you're sensing a pattern yet, but I would have to leave and I would just be overcome with fear again. And I would start thinking thoughts like, I'm sick, I'm not okay. I tried going for walks and walking was really scary and I just kept moving. I was like, okay, I'm not okay here. On to the next place. Okay, I'm not okay here. On to the next place. Drink a lot of water. Drink a lot of water. Like, calm down, Holly. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna get through this. It's gonna be fine. It sucked. But yeah, ultimately I realized that caffeine's not good for me. By linking this with previous experiences, which again were not this bad, this was by far the worst, I guess, mental health episode. And I couldn't get out of my head. I was just so stuck in my head that I couldn't do anything. It was so freaky. And eventually I'm like, oh yeah, I've been drinking coffee and I'm not really getting enough sleep. Yeah, it was just it was the coffee, honestly. Obviously, it's a combination of things, and I have realized that even though caffeine is the worst and most triggering source of anxiety, I think pairing it with alcohol really messes up my sleep, which having little sleep has also been a huge culprit to days or moments where I just can't handle life. My brain is broken. So, this is so fun to talk about. It took me a while to just kind of get out of the funk. I ended up getting off of coffee and I switched to black tea and green tea, which I just became a junkie for that stuff so quick. I was trying to eat healthier and I went tanning and I went to the gym and I actually worked out, which I never do. But I was just doing little things to make myself feel better. And then eventually I was able to meet up with relatives in Florida, and just being around other people basically fixed it completely, and I stopped drinking coffee at that point. So yeah, I kind of wanted to share that with you guys. I obviously didn't tell anyone about it while it was happening. I don't know if you can tell, but it does make me uncomfortable to talk about this and tell you guys this. To all my friends and family who watch my videos, they're gonna be like, what the heck, Holly? Why didn't you tell us that this happened? You know, like that's the other like really crappy thing about YouTube is I can't keep people from watching my stuff. So everyone has the option to know anything I put up. But I think it's important to talk about. And again, if me sharing my story helps someone who has their first panic attack or is having issues but they're not wanting to talk about it with anyone, like I can be your buddy. I would recommend finding someone in your real life that can also be your buddy, because I think it's important to have that. And asking your friends or your family about their mental health and starting that conversation, it might surprise you, because 2 of my favorite YouTubers just recently came out and told their stories about severe anxiety. And it was just so inspiring to me to do the same. And watching them do it gave me so much comfort in the fact that I consider myself lucky that it's basically diet related. And hearing what other YouTubers who I really admire, hearing them and knowing that they're, you know, still going through it and still dealing with it. And oh my gosh, my camera's gonna die. Oh no. I really hope I can finish this video. Anyways, yeah, so I don't feel like I'm the expert on telling people how to deal with panic attacks or anxiety because my scenarios have been very limited. However, I do have coping mechanisms in place that I've learned from the internet, basically. So if you guys want to keep talking about anxiety or just mental health in general, we can do that. This is kind of me opening up the floodgates to whatever you guys are kind of wanting. Being a solo traveler and going through that, I think it's another layer to solo traveling that I haven't shared with you guys yet that I wanted to because it's important and we all have our shit. It's just a matter of, you know, having that support system and not being afraid to reach out and talk about it. And, you know, if someone's having chronic anxiety or going through panic attacks on a regular basis and not dealing with it correctly, it can lead to things like suicide, which is the whole reason why I wanted to sit down and tell you guys this video today, just because it's so sad what happened with Anthony and Kate Spade, apparently, too. It's so sad. Suicide sucks. I wish I could end this video on a good note. I'll just end it and say thank you for listening. I appreciate you guys. Next video, I promise, will be a little bit lighter. I love you guys. See you soon. Peace.